What's up, everyone, and welcome back to The Marketing Grind, a show where we explore the world of B2B marketing from inside the trenches, talking about what's working, what's not, and why it all matters. I'm Gary, back again with my brother Mac. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Glad to be here. Great to chat with you again about some more B2B marketing.
Yes, yeah. So we're coming, recording this in the beginning of November. It is officially Q4. We've been talking about it all year, and we are here. So while most people are focused on kind of winding things down, getting to the end of the quarter, closing out the year, today we're going to talk a little bit about looking ahead and why that's the key to hitting your goals in 2025. Before we jump into it, this show is all about the coffee. What do you got in your glass, my man?
So, picked up some new beans. I wanted to try something a little bit different. This is the Enigma blend from Enigma Coffee, based in Los Angeles. I got locations kind of all over, and they're continuing to expand. I see that they're opening one up in Porter Ranch pretty soon. So
No way, really? I didn't know
hopefully
that.
soon you'll be able to experience the Enigma craze. But yeah, this is like their kind of signature blend. Good for espresso, good for pour over. Kind of covers all the ground. Yeah. What about you, man?
Yeah, that's awesome. I have tried Enigma once. I went by there a couple years ago, and yeah, they got good coffee. Today, I have a bean a roast that I really like. This is called Venice. It's from Groundwork Coffee, local SoCal coffee roaster, and yeah, this is another subscription. So I have a couple subscriptions. This is another one I get, and you typically see kind of like their same mainstays cycling through over and over. But this is one that like they pepper in throughout the year, and it's always a treat for me when I get it in my box. So yeah, Venice from Groundwork Coffee.
All right.
All right,
Shall
let's
we?
give them a whirl.
Yeah. Crowbars up.
Clink, clink.
Oh yeah, that's
Oh yeah.
nice. This
All
is
right,
like
give it to me.
chocolate, caramel. It's you can kind of like even pull out that like mushy stone fruit, like plums and cherries coming out of it, and it's just like super well balanced, like really really smooth.
Nice. That sounds good. It's we're entered into hot coffee season, you know? Like we're not sitting here at like 85, 90 degrees anymore. I think we got like a cool
I don't
70, low 70s today.
is that I don't know if that's going to stop you from continuing to drink cold brew though, right? I feel like
No,
you're
it's
just
not. But my
you're
my
cold brew through
fingers
and
are
through.
freezing. My fingers are so cold. I need a little koozie to keep my little fingers toasty while I drink my cold brew in the dead of winter. Yeah, this coffee. I was going to say this beer. This coffee is really good. It's giving me all the things that I like to see in a cold brew. Really bold, upfront character. Like I took a sip and I almost audibly was like, "Whoa," because it really just like hits you right in the face with this like bold roastiness that's not acidic. And that's why I drink cold brew because I don't like the acidity of hot brewed coffee. So that's really nice. And then, you kind of hit on the kind of chocolate stone fruit notes. I think I'm getting a lot of that here. There's still Halloween candy in the house. And so my brain's instantly going like Nestle Crunch on this. So yeah, good stuff. Really good coffee. I'm going to enjoy this one for this conversation.
Well, I think that's what I like about this coffee here is like it doesn't have that like blatant acidity that you normally would get. It's
Yeah.
like it's bold but balanced, and it's just like you kind of just pick up that kind of dark chocolate like right away. I think that's kind of where like that boldness sits on the tongue, and then it kind of just gets washed away with a little bit of like sweetness from a little caramel action, a little fruit action. So it's good. I
Yeah,
recommend
it's
it.
all about balance. It's all about balance. A good cup of coffee is all about balance, in my opinion.
No, I mean absolutely,
Yeah.
totally
Cool.
agree.
Awesome. Well, cheers. Let's enjoy these coffees and then let's dive into our topic for today. this one is your topic, and when I saw it in there, it kind of got me thinking about like what's true for us today versus what are the kind of like so-called nostalgic good old times. And when I'm thinking about like the early days of working with smaller brands, working on smaller teams, working on less, I don't know, lower pressure projects. You could be nimble, you could be flexible, you could plan content and get it out that same week. Now we're planning ahead, essentially is key to the roles that you and I live in. You sitting kind of firmly in the behemoth marketing infrastructure of an enterprise software company. Me, still on a small team, but more in a managerial role. So planning ahead is really what this is all about as we go into Q4 and close out the year. What are you thinking about as you're thinking about 2025? Yeah, what are you excited about? What do you got on the docket?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of exciting opportunity, for us at Vertex, specifically in like the customer marketing realm, to be able to really kind of rethink, what we did in 2024. And again, I wasn't there for the entire year. And what I really gathered from just talking to the team and looking at, what we wanted to achieve is, they were very, very much in this place of, planning content and everything in Q1, and then it takes a lot of time to get that content whipped up, and by the time you're actually getting to like running campaigns, you're already in Q2. And
Yeah.
so this was a conversation that we had this year as a team, to really want to get ahead of that and to really start planning things out in Q3, Q4, so that by the time Q1 rolls around, like we're hitting the ground running with campaigns that we want to run. So it really comes down to like looking at what the business goals are for 2025, looking at the different levels of OKRs that marketing has that tracks back up to those business goals, and then planning the campaigns around what's going to help achieve those. And then as we kind of peel back the layers of these different campaigns, across different platforms, it then becomes, okay, what kind of content do we need? So we did a like a content gap analysis of, what are we missing? What do we not want to repurpose that the demand gen team has worked on in the past? Because there's very different goals between, the different marketing orgs, right? Demand
Hmm.
gen, they want new logos. The content they're producing is pretty high funnel, and it's just a different context to what we're trying to achieve with customers. They're already kind of down that funnel. We have a different relationship with them, so that content doesn't work. And so I think it comes down to slowing things down a little bit, as you mentioned, like, yeah, like teams that we were on in the past, like working fast, being nimble, being flexible, getting things out quickly, just so we can kind of keep things rolling, and really looking at slowing things down a little bit and being a little bit more thoughtful into the types of content that we want to work on, and being able to achieve actionable goals early on in the quarter versus chasing our tails again at the end of Q1 at that third month, being like, oh crap, like we still haven't run X, Y, and Z. So
Hmm.
it's just kind of slowing things down a bit.
Yeah, that resonates with me a lot. We do a lot of quarterly planning, both in kind of client campaigns, but also at the agency level, the business level. And I find that very frequently we're solidifying campaigns, a few weeks into the quarter. And so when you extrapolate that over the course of, yearly goals and yearly plans, this concept of like a lost month could actually impact you and your team's ability to hit your goals for the year. So it like you put yourself behind the eight ball like before you even get started. And so talking about planning this early, it just makes a lot of sense. It's kind of a no-brainer. So smart things that you guys are doing there.
Yeah, and I think what we want to try to avoid is what we're going through right now is, yeah, we want to plan for Q1, but we're also running campaigns right now in Q4. So like
Yeah.
there's still need to be successful in Q4 and trying to pack in as much as we can before the end of the year, so that we can at least drive like meaningful pipeline that can help kind of carry over into Q1. So I think we want to try to, for next year anyways, is not rushing through Q4 projects just to finish things off because we were behind the eight ball, you know, earlier in the year. And so I think is when we get ahead in Q1, then you can kind of enjoy the holidays a little bit and not
Hmm.
feel like, man, I gotta get things, I gotta, get this campaign done. I gotta get X more pipeline at least in before the end of the year. And yeah, it just relieves some of that pressure, from a performance standpoint. So um, yeah, and I think going into 2025 too, it's like what else can we do in terms of content? Like, being like an enterprise, especially like we've been around for a long time, right? And so same old tactics, same old sort of strategies, the white papers, the ebooks, the infographics. And so it makes us also think about like, what's new in 2025? Like what types of content should we be producing? Um, and so we want to lean really heavily into video. Like we sort of have like a renewed budget for Q4 that we're going to be tacking into from a video standpoint, and really kind of going back to like that was like the spoken wheel sort of method of like developing some better higher quality video and then breaking that stuff up over the
Hmm.
course of the year so that so we can keep dipping into this brand new content and not necessarily trying to rely on old stuff, or like rushing our content team to produce things on the fly because we need it. And so it's we're trying to think really long term, like over the course of the year, not just Q1. So I think that's another thing we're thinking about, um, is Q1 and beyond, like all of
Hmm.
2025, so that we feel like we have a good bank of content we can just pull into from a customer perspective, and and just feel good about the quality that we're putting out as opposed to the quantity per se.
Yeah, the that like adage of what is it? I'm gonna butcher this, but like cheap, fast, and good. You know how there's that like Venn diagram that like or like that adage that like you can't have all three essentially. Like if you want something good and fast, it's going to be expensive. If you want something to be good and cheap, it's not going to happen quickly. Like all that kind of like those three levers that you can pull as someone producing work. And I think it correlates really well. I think about this all the time when we're like scoping out projects and talking to prospects and going into execution mode. And I heard this kind of theme pop up several times as you've been talking, like rushing, and doing planning so that you can like taking the time to plan now so that you can have more time to execute later, and not just that so you can do more but so that you can do better, you can go deeper, you can experimenting with new formats and new channels takes time to figure out. So like it's not like you're pumping out blog posts the same way you always have. This is a new process that you're going to have new team members in, people you might not have worked with. You don't have SOPs developed and all that kind of stuff. So this planning is creating the space for you to execute at quality. And like if I can name any of the themes of this show, it really is about like how do we find the space to do better work. And that's really what you're talking about here. I think a lot about like the hamster wheel of content production. Like when do we get off? Like it's frenetic. It's like, okay, we published this one, we're on to the next one, and you can't think about promotion in a intentional way. Like when you don't plan and you're jumping into Q1 and you're trying to catch up, you just feel like you're pumping things out and you're missing check boxes, and or maybe even you're doing more checkbox marketing. You're like, I don't have time to think outside the box, so let's
Yeah,
just check the boxes and move
exactly.
on, and you're not able to innovate. That's like I think a lot of what you're talking about here, at least like when I'm trying to extrapolate it to me and my teams. But I think that theme remains constant from the agency side to what you're experiencing in house.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like the more just cheap cheap content you're putting out, I mean, you're having to dedicate resources and budget to all of this versus even, thinking, taking a step back a little bit and looking at, all right, I want to create less quantity but higher quality, and let me actually be able to pay a better resource, or whether it's outsourced or even internal, or even just like the way we're promoting it, if it costs money, to be able to really kind of really help amplify that quality content versus just the fast food. Kind of reminded me of
Yeah.
that Seinfeld Kenny Rogers episode. Jerry calls Kenny Rogers fast food, and his buddy says, "Good food served quickly." Right, just a little spin on it, because I think, like, at the end of the day, we do want to get things out fast. We want to be able to be prepared,
Yeah.
because as marketers, we know, like, there's always going to be a wrench thrown into the mix. Like, there's going to be a team, or a product or a feature or a client that's going to have like an immediate need for something to where you need to pivot a little bit. And so when you have better planning in place, and you can, where to move the pieces a little bit, so you can fit in some of those like impromptu campaigns or projects that we know are going to pop up throughout the year. Nothing's ever really solidified. um, it's like chess at times, where you just need to move the pieces in the right spot to make sure you get that checkmate.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, let's kind of sketch this out to be like a little more tangible. You're talking about video, right? Unless you have a videographer established on your team that has reps doing it with you guys, then you're likely thinking about tapping into an agency, a freelancer, some other resource externally, a contractor. And so if you're in your planning, you're like, okay, we need to produce 4 videos in Q1. If you start that thinking in January, and it takes you the 6 weeks to get your plan together, and then it takes you time to create your strategic briefs and get the team bought in, you're not like getting on the books of that contractor till at the very quickest, like the end of Q1. Those videos won't be launched in Q1. So like if you actually want video content produced, at least in the can, let's just be realistic that maybe it'll take more time to get the post production in play, but you got to be planning for that in November. You got to get on that contractor's schedule before end of year so that you can hit the ground running in January. And that's really, it's all about resource allocation. Internal team members, established team members, departments that you're familiar working with. Those are the easy part. The and is really where this becomes super important, is the departments that you don't have track records of collaborating with. I'm sure that you can think of a few on your end that you don't have as many reps around the track, and then the contractors that you don't have a lot of experience working in. And when I'm hearing things like video, and I'm hearing things like interactive, immersive, AI, like these are like the innovative elements and edges of marketing programs, and you need to get on these people's radars quickly and early in order to have like the thoughtful conversation, the thoughtful strategic planning to actually get into execution mode. Because if you want that done in Q1 and you've set the expectation internally that that's going to happen, what's going to end up happening is you pump out crap. You pump out something with someone that's not as experienced because you couldn't book the person that you actually wanted. So you have someone that's cheap, and you're having to put a whole lot of your own personal time in the strategic planning, in the post production, and guiding that person. And then in the end, it ends up being like a lesser version of what it could have been. And everyone's just breathes that sigh of frustration at the end. And the disappointing piece to all this, or like where this gets dangerous, is if you do something that's under your standards, or underwhelming, and it doesn't perform, you cannot justify that budget for 2026. And there you just lost a piece of something that could take your program into the future, and you've just stagnated your marketing department for another year. That's the danger of it. It's a little hyperbolic, but like it's the reality, especially when you're dealing with annual budgets.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's why we're having those conversations now with some of those vendors, and being able to set that expectation of, this is what we're looking to do. Here's a time frame, and even if it's like, we want them, even if it's not getting that delivered before the end of the year, but at least it's being worked on, and it can get delivered within the first couple weeks of January, or at least within the first month of Q1, so you can at least like get things moving.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and I think that just kind of goes back to getting ahead earlier in the year so that you can utilize, you know, Q4 basically to again plan again and experiment and innovate and have those types of thoughts like really throughout the year, but being able um, to actually put a little bit more thought into it and not feeling like we got to rush through because we're behind again. Um, and yeah, and luckily there's like software that can help you develop like the interactive and immersive content. But again, like those are high ticket items that
Yeah.
involve a sales process and an approval, and we all know how like sales cycles go with big software companies. um so
Enter procurement. Yeah.
oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, yeah, timing is of the essence when you want to innovate and you want to develop that quality content.
I feel like the things we're saying here are so obvious. Like, I'm like, duh. Like, of course it should be done this way. Like, the fact that I'm not doing it this way it feels like such a miss. But what I'm hoping through this conversation is that there are other people out there like this. So if you're part of like the percentage of marketing orgs that are planning ahead properly, that are taking this approach and have it really streamlined and in action, congratulations. Like, I think that you're probably at the cutting edge of people that are getting shit done and getting it done well. But there's probably a lot of people like myself that are just in perpetual catch up mode and using the first month of the year or the first few weeks of the quarter to finalize the planning. And this is a wake up call for us all that there is a better way, and you just have to be intentional about how you approach it. So that's what I'm taking away from kind of you bringing up this topic. I appreciate that. Looking at kind of some of the things that we've kind of bounced back and forth before we started recording. I'm curious. I'd like to maybe have you spend a little bit more time on like details about what you're thinking about for 2025. I know we talked about video, we talked about AI. Like, can you those are kind of big, broad buckets. So, what specifically in those? And we also talked a little bit about like connection to brand and like how are you closing that circle really well so that you are going down the video road and the AI personalized content road and still making sure that like everything is on brand and that you're nailing the messaging the way you need to be.
Yeah, well, for our specific department, like it's all about segmentation and the account based marketing aspects. And so, for myself anyways, being a big enterprise company, we are partnered with some of the larger enterprise resource planning companies and software out there like SAP and Oracle, and not every customer fits the same shoe. And so if we have a brand new feature or product within those specific ecosystems, we have to be very thoughtful about like, well, who are we really targeting here? And that's going to help determine the messaging, because we're going to talk to the stakeholders that handle those teams to make sure we're understanding what those pain points are, and really looking at the benefits of like a new feature launch or product launch to ensure that what we're putting together from a messaging standpoint really hits the nail on the head for these specific customers that may want to talk to our inside sales team and explore things further, because we still go through sort of the same typical sales process when we get a customer to raise their hand about something. And when it relates to brand, again, like these are customers, these are people that have already purchased our product, and so we have a different relationship with them than what demand gen's working on from a prospecting level. And so they're already sort of bought into the Vertex brand, and they understand what our values are. We just need to make sure that we keep sort of hitting that a little bit harder to make sure that what they're looking for from a software partner really aligns with their own values too. And so the more that we sort of take our content, align that back to our brand values and what we from a software as a service perspective, how we want to serve our customers, we want to make sure they understand what's important to us, so that they're completely bought into continuing their relationship, with us, and they want to explore these new features and products because at the end of the day, we're building it for them. Um, and so that's sort of the way that I think about aligning content, aligning the themes of content with the brand values, and from a segmentation standpoint, to make sure that things are very personalized to that specific audience, and making sure that and the content we produce goes through our content team anyways, so they're going to make sure
Hmm.
that it's on brand, and that there's consistency in terms of the look and feel, and then of course when we look at messaging, that it's going through our product marketing team, uh, to ensure that everything really aligns with what they've put out from a positioning standpoint. And so that's how we sort of run things, and that's what we need to do. And again, that's why we want to plan ahead and get ahead, because all this content still needs to go through our own approval process and make sure it goes through our own brand and partner or product marketing team.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of like steps that we need to take. Again, like when you're working for a small company, small team, you don't have these types of checks and balances that you can just sort of pump things out pretty fast.
Yeah.
Um, we have we have to go through this process, and I don't want to call it red tape. It's just it is what it is. This is how these types of companies operate, and you
Hmm.
just sort of have to follow the process.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there's areas that you might be able to give me like specific examples. So like for the AI, using AI to kind of create personalized content, like that's kind of like a buzzwordy just concept in general. Like, are you tapping into a specific platform that recognizes the user and then kind of tweaks headlines and sections of content to be based on how you've tagged them in the CRM, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of hands-on, what I've been doing right now is using Jasper from a copywriting standpoint, and so we have all this data flowing into Jasper in regards to just the Vertex brand, and the brand voice, and being able to kind of spin up the right type of messaging that we want to achieve, and make sure there's consistency across that. So I mean, that's one tool that we're using from just our team standpoint. Um, and I know that that's again, like we want to innovate, so like we want to look at other tools out there that's going to help us um, look at specific types of content, and yeah, again, like switch up some headlines and some of the content, um, and being able to personalize a lot deeper.
Yeah. And then I'm also interested in that kind of alignment of content themes with brand values. Is there like, and maybe you're not able to speak about specifics on this, but I'm curious of like an example of that. Like, what is one content theme that you guys came up with, and how did it connect to a specific brand value, and how did that manifest itself in like specific topics if you've taken it that far? This is the type of work I also do, so I'm curious how you guys think about it.
Yeah, so we haven't gotten that far yet. Um, so we're like in this initial stage of just getting on the same page of what we want to do. Um, and I think again, like for us, like because time is of the essence, we're just sort of rolling um, with what we can for now.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk about like aligning content themes to brand values, I look at that as a long term thing. Probably looking at that more in 2025. Um, Again, like I haven't been here long enough to like understand like the way this team really thinks about content development.
Yeah.
We've just been sort of repurposing things and making little tweaks based on uh, you know prospect versus customer, and that's kind of where. Then I think that's why we're doing what we're doing now, is because we're seeing that the content that we're using today is not sufficient enough, and it's not moving the needle quite as much as we'd like it to.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to have our own sort of customer focused library of content. And when I bring up that point of like aligning to brand values, I think that's just like when we talk about no brainer stuff, it's yeah, like we want to connect everything back to the business and what the business
Hmm.
stands for and what the brand stands for. I mean, this company's been around for, like 3 or 4 decades. And so, there's longevity there, and there's customers that I'm sure that have been with them for a long time. Um, and this is a company that's going from like legacy on-premise type solution to like really trying to push into the SaaS world. And so there's a lot of like in terms of like innovation, that's like a value of ours, and being able to push that specific value onto our customers and to really showcase like the SaaS version of our platform, to help move people to the future, like future transformation.
Hmm. Hmm. Cool. Yeah. The content strategy piece is fresh in my mind. I've gone through, I guess I'm coming up on 2 years in my current role, and I've had a number of laps around the track on building content strategies for our client brands, but we're also in the middle of doing one for the agency right now, which is always, it's just a lot more fun because you're a lot closer to it. You make a lot less assumptions. But but yeah, we've recently kind of innovated our process on this, borrowing from some thinking of like a handful of people in the B2B content space. And I'm really excited about what we've come out with on the other end. And your comment around alignment with brand values, like I feel like I finally have figured that out. So maybe that's a future episode. Maybe that's next episode where we can maybe dive into like what that looks like, the steps and the processes. But to kind of keep things here, we mentioned earlier on like early planning is not just like the end result is not just so that you can do better work, right? Like ultimately all of this rolls up to like revenue impact. So um when we're thinking about content, KPIs and measurement is always something that like comes up, and a lot of times content people like can get caught with their pants down a little bit and be like, well, we weren't measuring, we don't have the right tracking in place, or here are some like top line metrics that like have no connection to the bottom line. So and I've experienced that, so I'm not like pointing the blame on anyone. Like I've felt the pain recently about how to properly track and measure content performance and content impact on revenue. So what are you thinking about when it comes to measurement and data driving how you move forward with content, how you report back on content, and ultimately like how do you carve out more budget for content the next year? Any thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just comes down to, the like the true like segmentation and the use of that content to that specific segment. And so I think that's why we break things down pretty granularly when we look at, running campaigns, whether it's like through email or through, paid versions, and making and seeing like what content is ultimately driving, the leads, right? Or driving like the for us anyways, influence opportunities. And that's a one way that we're doing it today. Where you are the
So is that like
library.
a multi-touch attribution? Like this person touched this piece of content at some point in the journey over the last X number of days before they became an opportunity, and like that gets scored that way, or how does that actually happen? Do you have like a line of visibility into that, or is that like a fully other department that handles
Yeah,
all of
I
that
mean
thinking?
that's like the marketing operations team that's like taking care of that. So like for me, like I look at, you know, what drove an influence opportunity. So I'll look at Salesforce, specifically. I'll look at, was it through the email campaign, and which specific email, because I'm, pushing different types of content in different, sort of like the nurture chain of emails I'm sending out, and seeing
Mm-hmm.
like which one specifically drove an influence opportunity, and looking at the sort of the click through rate on that piece of content, and then sort of tracking that back to the form fill. which, I'm not, I hate, like, we don't gate the content, which is good. So like the form fills basically like if you want to get in touch
Yeah, that's
with
a
the
hand
sales
raise.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So otherwise, like the content is ungated, and we're able to look at the views, within the
Imagine gating
platform.
your customer content, though.
Oh, I know exactly. Yeah,
That'd
it's
be a
like,
fucked up world.
yeah, that's stupid.
I'm
Um,
sure it exists.
I just wanted to clarify that there, yeah, because the forms that we use are essentially just, yeah, for the customer to say, hey, this is interesting. I want to learn more about it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then just the content hub that we use to house like all of it also just tracks, um, the views there, and can track,
What tech are you using for the hub?
Optimizely.
Okay.
But I think we're moving to a new platform next year. I forget the name of it. Um, I'm not sure why, but yeah. But yeah,
Cool.
so I mean, so again, like that's another kind of just look into how content's performing, and if it's not getting the views that we're looking for, if it's not performing, that's when you have to kind of do that like regular content audit, and make tweaks based on what you're seeing, or what
Yeah.
you're not seeing, and seeing, okay, like maybe this piece of content, maybe the headline, or maybe there's something in the messaging that did not resonate. So not like you have to scrap the whole piece. Maybe it just needs to be rewritten in a different way.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the end, it sounds like you guys are relying upon some type of like touched attribution. There's like a probably like a multi-touch model where they interacted with a piece of content in some way. They opened an email, they clicked a link, and at some point later along a timeline, they filled out a form, and you can see whether your campaign influenced that last click or that actual form fill, or they were an earlier kind of influential touch point. But what I think about when I think about these types of um, programs, I'm thinking about this on kind of the whole ecosystem, demand gen and customer side. But I think even more on the customer side, like being able to see if someone saw a piece of content, um, and later on that like opportunity was created through a rep. I don't know if it's like a customer success person or account manager or however you guys have things set up, but like, is there a is there like a dark funnel in that system where when you're looking at the data and you're like, well, this piece of content like didn't influence any opportunities, but like, is there a chance that that piece of content actually did influence a lot of opportunities, and it's just not like telling the story's not being told in the data? Or do you guys have like a lot of confidence in that system that it's telling you the right things? Because it requires the person operating the relationship to put the right things in the CRM. Like there's like a requirement that that is happening, and so you have to like either make that assumption that like we're 90% confident that like we're capturing the most meaningful data in there, or we don't know. Like there probably is like a good amount of touch points happening that are completely not reflected in the data.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there definitely is a dark funnel. Um, that's why we utilize like the form, because all that is tied back into, track through Salesforce, and the CRM is going to know that it came through this specific page, went through this
Yeah.
specific form, and this is all tied back to a customer marketing effort. However, yeah, there's absolutely, I'm sure, times where a customer sees a piece of content, they don't fill anything out, and maybe their customer success rep gets in touch with them at a later time, or maybe they reach out to their customer success rep and
Yep.
say, "Hey, like I saw this thing, and I'm interested in learning more." And that's another thing with this type of company is that we there was a time where like we were really trying to not dedupe efforts that like customer success was trying to do, because they're doing outreach too, and
Mm-hmm.
so they have their own numbers that they're trying to achieve, and it got to a point where like it just got super messy, to where we were like, you know what, like we're just going to reach out to the customers too, and just so happens it crosses over with customer success. That's just something that is really difficult for us to really separate
Yeah.
all the time. So there definitely is, I'm sure, times where that's happening. Um,
Hmm.
and to that point too, like we're not touching like open opportunities that customer success may have with these people. So um, yeah, so if there is something that's already sort of, if a customer success rep has kind of opened an opportunity and there's maybe even if it's early stage, it doesn't matter. We're just like, all right, you handle that stuff. We're only going to handle the customers that don't have anything open, and
Mm.
we try our best to influence that, and we just kind of hope it gets tracked back to our efforts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that's a big topic that's that's on our director's mind of how do we handle this for the future, and I know it's a frustration on his part. It's a frustration I think on a lot of people's parts, but it's just such a I think a messy area, and that's something that marketing operations has to really work on and help us out on.
Yeah. The way I've shifted my thinking in recent months is that coming from an SEO performance background, uh, marketing attribution felt like really clean. I just took for granted how clean things were.
Yeah,
And that most of my thinking around reporting was all causal. So, like, factually, like, did a click result in a lead? And now I'm like, how do I think about this more from like correlation? So, like, can I put data together that shows an investment in this type of activity that's meant to achieve this type of result actually resulted in net new revenue, net new opportunities, or deal size, or whatever, um, or even like sales velocity, or like, time in stage or something like that. And even if I'm not taking credit for it, and being clear, I'm not taking credit for all of this, but sometimes the correlation tells a better story about the true impact of content, and it's really around the content side, um, than actual like multi-touch attribution and that type of more data driven scientific way of thinking. Like trying to draw a direct line from effort to impact can sometimes cause you to prioritize the wrong things. And I've tried on my end to start thinking differently around that, and have started positioning our reporting in different ways to like tell different stories to a client. And yeah, we'll keep the same graphs in there that show, content influenced opportunities, but can we show something else that zooms out in a way and has them thinking differently about how an investment in content and like high level brand marketing might impact actual like actions that customers and prospects might be taking. So just another way of thinking about it.
yeah. I
But
mean, I
as
know
we're
in our CRM, like we are. I mean, one step like we're trying to take to like at least show some influence is we're is in the completion action. So if somebody clicks on a link within the email, they don't fill out the form, right? But at least if they click it, we know, and we add them as a campaign member to that specific campaign, so
Mhm.
that when if they eventually do become an opportunity, that data is also tracked back that all right, they were a member of this specific campaign that was run by customer marketing, because they clicked the email because they were interested, like not just opened it, but like actually like clicked in and
Some level of intent. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so we're bringing that into the mix as a way for us to at least get some clearer insight into did this work, and can we get some credit for it.
Yeah. Cool. As we're coming up on time, any kind of final takeaways? Like, what are the kind of like we've covered a lot of the kind of foundational bases. Is there like any extra stuff, advanced stuff that you're thinking about? Maybe you're implementing that in this quarter and like for this upcoming planning season, or maybe it's something that you are thinking about adding to next year's planning season. Just like take us to the future of this. So like how can we be great at planning?
Yeah, well, again, I think it all sort of starts with prioritization. I mean, I know that's pretty obvious, but like as I mentioned earlier, it's understanding like what are the ultimate goals of the business and the marketing organization. And so, for as a specific example, like deepening our relationship with SAP is huge. We just have a really big opportunity to continue to tap into that ecosystem, not only from a perspective level, but really from a customer level. And so the business is investing heavily um, into developing additional features and products for the SAP ecosystem. And so that's being sort of built into the prioritization of our planning and making sure that the content that we're going to be producing is going to lean heavily into that audience, specifically with brand new tools. And again, like to that point, like we're kind of a partner with the SAP team, so like we have a whole partner marketing team that's also trying to like develop and deepen their relationship with these different partners and integration partners of ours. And so sometimes like you don't have to like just work alone in that capacity, like tapping into the partner marketing team if you have one, so that there's collaborative effort across what you want to create from a segmentation level, but looking at what the partner marketing team is working on, so that maybe there's a better opportunity to develop that better quality content that's going to speak more to that specific partner ecosystem, ERP, whatever it may be. um, and then we don't really think about this at our company, but even just the same thing with like influencers and like user generated content. I think that's another thing that we're trying to like lean into a little bit more, is looking at like the content people are producing, around our products.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we have a specific team here in customer marketing that's, all about advocacy. And so working with that team very closely, because, again, like we're sort of like down the funnel a little bit in terms of the content we're producing, that like customer stories are huge. And
Yeah.
so looking at the specific products that we're putting out, and in terms of developing content around that, is what customers are having success with this brand new feature. And instead of it just being like this big piece around just like X customer did well with our software, it's like, all right, well, what piece of that software, what specifically about the software are they getting value out of, and can we tie it back to the actual product themselves, and utilizing the that third party validation, around our offering. So building that into the content plan is top of mind for me anyways, because again, as I'm focused on you know products and features themselves and not just the overall Vertex software, uh, being as contextual as possible, being as personalized as possible around um, those efforts is huge for me in terms of planning things out.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. Thank you for bringing up this topic. For anyone listening to this that hasn't entered into planning mode for 2025, like me, it's time to get our asses in gear. But yeah, this is fun. I learned a lot, and I appreciate you breaking it down for us. And yeah, that's the podcast. That's the episode. If you liked what you heard, like, subscribe, leave us a comment, let me know what you liked. And yeah, we'll see you next time. This was fun. Thanks, Mac.
Yep, you bet, man. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, see ya.
See ya.